Good morning. I'm Robin Merrill, and it's my honor to welcome you to FCCI's very first live stream Leader Talks. And yes, we are streaming in real time from the FCCI International Conference, where we are gathered in the Ritz-Carlton Ballroom. Our Empowered to Serve conference theme provides a wonderful backdrop for the conversations we're about to have with both faith-driven entrepreneurs and investors. In our first segment, you'll be hearing from 3 entrepreneurs who are pursuing their passion to serve others through business as image bearers of God, believing that the Imago Dei provides deep, meaningful purpose in all their endeavors. And stay with us for our second segment at 11:25 Eastern, which will feature several faith-driven investment companies who are seeking to empower Christian businesses to serve even greater kingdom potential. Thanks for joining us this morning and enjoy the conversation.
Hi, my name is Chad Merrill, and I'm privileged to be here to interview and to share with you 3 great faith-driven entrepreneurs who we have with us. So as we get started, to my left, we've got Jared Fulks, who's the managing director, managing partner of PureFlow. We've got Caleb Brakey, who's the founder of Renown Publishing, and Spencer Sutliff, who's the founder of Rugged Road Outdoors. So we're just going to start off by having them just tell a little of their story and the company origin story, and then we'll get into some conversation. So Jared, tell us about PureFlow.
Thank you for having us today. I'm so excited. I'm joined here by my wife, Megan, of 5 years. We live in Atlanta, Georgia, and I about 2.5 years ago realized that in my life I had this conflict of do I go into full-time ministry or do I continue in business, having come from some startup companies? And I quickly found out that there's an opportunity to do both. And so that's kind of what led me here today. I got involved in a business. We relaunched in 2020. It's called PureFlow. We're an asset financing company in Uganda and soon to be across East Africa. And it's a super exciting time for me as we get to tell this story to people like you, Chad, and others about what's happening there. And there's this big overarching problem in developing countries, and that is that there's not access to affordable financing. And so PureFlow looks to step into that gap by providing a solution to provide access to affordable financing for income-generating assets. If you've been to East Africa, you know there's motorcycles everywhere. They're like gnats. You can't get away from them, but you got to have them. It's how you get from point A to point B. And the problem that was found was that most of these guys don't own these motorcycles that they're using to provide an income for their family. And so PureFlow steps in the gap, and we provide access to affordable loans where they can actually move on a journey towards ownership of this asset that ultimately is going to create financial independence. Because previously they're stuck on these indefinite rent cycles where they can never get their head above water to look ahead for their family and for their kids. And so the great thing about it is that we're competing with a lot of other, if you will, microfinance, asset financing companies. And so our differentiator as men of faith, my partner, Colin Winrick, he oversees operations on the ground. The 2 of us have this passion to get people around the table. We looked at the life of Jesus, and if you look, it doesn't take very long, you'll see that he was constantly reclining at a table with people. And so in our model, the great thing is that we're trying to have a high-touch relationship with all of the people that are moving towards ownership. So they pay on a weekly basis, and when they pay, we have a seat for them at a table at one of our 5 branches where we actually get into the Word of God together. And so our team is fellowshipping with our members constantly as they're moving towards ownership. So that's who we are and what we're about.
Great. Thank you, Jared. Caleb, tell us.
So I'm here with my wife, Brittany, of 14 years, and our life has been about story since day one. We, of all things, were arrested on our honeymoon as suspected bank robbers. To this day, have not been able to top that story. 7 squad cars pulled us over. They had guns pointed at us. We were not bank robbers, by the way. But we spent all of our wedding money on books on writing. I was a journalist. I covered the New York Yankees for a season for MLB.com. And then God said, Caleb, you're going to use your pen for other ways. And so he called me into publishing, and we've been there for 15 years now, and it's the greatest privilege of my life to help those people who, maybe hiding the good stuff under a bushel. They haven't told their story. They haven't got that great purpose that God's been calling them to out. And to be able to bring our skill set of storytelling to them has been the greatest privilege of our life. So for the past 8 years, we've written about 200 books with our team. And we get to amplify the voices of amazing Christian men and women into the highest echelons of influence, which is what we really need, because the big problem today, and if you've seen it in your Barnes & Noble, is that the best books don't always get written. They really don't. Most people will find someone with a big platform, like YouTube, and they'll say, you have to write a book because you have a big platform. And they could have got that platform from maybe a viral video. But there's a lot of amazing people with incredible stories who think, well, because I don't have a lot of people that I know yet, I shouldn't write this. And that's just not true. So we love unearthing the incredible stories that God has. I mean, I can't meet one person at this conference. Even our Uber ride here, we found out he cooked for Nelson Mandela and presidents. Everyone has an incredible story. And so I love hearing it. I love unearthing it. If we talk, I know the first question I'll have for you is going to be, what's your story?
It's great. Thank you, Caleb. So Spencer Sutliff, tell us about Rugged Road.
Hey, so Spencer Sutliff, founder and CEO of Rugged Road. Not as cool as Caleb. Never got caught robbing any banks or anything like that. But I've always been a bit of a serial entrepreneur from the time I was a kid, doing lemonade stands, things like that. And I was just always looking for, kind of that next idea, that next opportunity. And when I was a senior in high school, that opportunity came. There was a guy doing a demonstration at a high school chemistry class. He developed all this really cool stuff for the military. And one of the materials he'd worked on, primarily on the defense side, was this polyurea coating that they were putting on the bottom of Humvees to protect from roadside bombs and all kinds of really cool stuff. And a classmate of mine at the time, who'd been skinning bucks from the time he could walk, was like, hey, what if we took this coating, put it on a high-density foam core, and made like a lightweight Yeti? And I was like, wow, that's like a really cool idea. So, kind of off to the races after that, pursuing this concept to develop a high-performance cooler that you could actually take with you on pretty much any travel situation, any journey. For me, I like to rock climb, kayak, things like that. So the idea of something that's lightweight that can actually come along with you on all these different trips was really cool to me. But what was even cooler, no pun intended, is the fact that the cooler market is a several billion-dollar market, believe it or not, in the US. And I looked at all these industry giants and I thought, what if you took just a sliver of the market share that they have and you decided to commit to use your business as a tool to give back? And that's something I had some people in my life doing, modeling to me. And it was just something that was kind of like a light bulb moment to me that went off thinking, here's this opportunity that landed in my lap of, a way to kind of reinvent the wheel with what people are doing in this marketplace. And if we take that and use that as a tool to give back, a lot of good things could be done. So that's kind of the business side of what I do. And on the personal side, I've had the opportunity of my lifetime to go to Western Africa a handful of times, and I've seen firsthand the impact that clean drinking water can have on a community. And a lot of people in this room are probably familiar with some of the stories, but I've just seen, it almost makes me shake a little bit just thinking about it, but I've seen how when you get just that first cornerstone foundational block for a community, it's like a domino effect. And I've firsthand seen, villages when I was like 13 years old that had nothing. They were living like people did 2,000 years ago. And I was privileged to see these water projects put in place and go visit at a young age and then go back years later. And I saw these villages that had basically nothing, where this one solution had been solved. And when I came back years later, they had a market, they had a school, they had a little economy starting to thrive. So for me, I've tried to tie the two together of this solution for a market that has a need for lighter coolers in a very big market, and used that to grow the Rugged Road Foundation to focus primarily on wells, but other initiatives as well as we grow.
Great, thank you. So let's start with a few questions here. Jared, Uganda, motorcycles, microfinance. What gave you and Colin the inspiration? How did you decide to start the company? And just take us through that story of how that came about.
Yeah, so when I first heard the story, maybe if you've heard it now, you feel the same way. I was inspired. And I was inspired because I realized the depth of the problem that we're trying to solve, and knowing that we're just going to be a small piece of a huge problem. And I started thinking about what stuff do I have access to own? So everyone in this room has access to go get a loan on a car. Everyone in this room probably, maybe a lot of you actually have done this, but to get access to debt for a business, to grow a business. Most of us have access to finance a home. And the ability that does for us, just in America, living here where we were born, it puts us light years ahead of most of the world. And so when you break that problem at scale down to a very small piece, you look at these, just in Uganda, 1 million plus people that do this one thing for a living, and they cannot own that asset. It's a big problem. And so the heartbeat behind it was, how do we get people around a table where we can make disciples? That was the heartbeat of the foundation of PureFlow. And then, honestly, that's been the tension as we've scaled, because we don't want to drift from that focus. But, pun intended, the motorcycle became the vehicle in which we could build bridges relationally with people, or we could have an opportunity to invite them in to build community. And so, if you've been to most parts of the world, I would just say like Africa, we use Africa generally here, you'll notice that men work a lot. They work 7 days a week, 12, 14-hour days. They're not engaged in community most of the time. They're definitely not engaged in biblical community a lot of the time. Maybe outside, if you know people there, you might know a pastor, and you're like, well, no, they're always engaged in biblical community. They're kind of a one-off in that sense. So the general person that's working all the time is not engaged in the ability to look at God's word, to study it, to do it with other men. And so this is one opportunity where we actually go right after men who we believe are leading these households and these communities. And so our prayer is that as they move towards this financial independence, they're also, our prayer is that as they come around the table, that they're going to find their creator, and in doing that, they're going to have eternal impact in their communities and in their families. And we're seeing that already. So that's really how we solve the problem. And as we look to expand, it's into asset financing. And so the great thing is, like, our hope is that one day they have the same access to financing that I have, that you have, to build wealth for their families.
Great, thank you, Jared. So Spencer, we'll kick over to you. Just starting the company, you decided, you saw this cool experiment in high school, you go off to college, and the idea is formed. How'd you go about starting Rugged Road, and kind of what do you do? What's the process? How do you get to market? Just tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I had done a couple different entrepreneurial endeavors in high school. Peachtree pressure washers were just pressure washing, and we had I could go on and on. We had Gwinnett Tree Cycle. We were recycling Christmas trees, all these random things. But the most serious one when I was a high schooler was we had launched a T-shirt company, and I won't go into the weeds of that, but we were in a handful of retailers, and I gained a lot of business experience through that. So for me, when I set off to pursue the cooler idea, I knew that we were going to have to have a brand to surround that. So immediately we started selling some T-shirts and hats and backpacks, like basic sportsman apparel, just trying to get that foundation started. And so we had that going on one side, and then on the other side, I was going to as many mentors as I humanly possibly could. Like anyone who would just take 5 minutes, 10, 30 minutes with me, like if I could buy them lunch, even though I didn't have the money. Like if anyone would just sit there and kind of tell me how they got to where they went, I wanted to absorb that like a sponge. So I was at UGA at the time, and I would come home all the time and meet with a lot of different people who were in kind of positions that I wanted to be in someday. and just ask them for advice and see how they got to where they were going. And I definitely, took a lot of missteps early because, I'm only 18 years old at the time, trying to work with different engineering partners and things like that. The biggest thing I think for me was just going to people who had that experience and just, learning from their experiences definitely saved me some time.
Great, thank you. So Caleb, how, in starting, you talked about wanting to tell stories, and how do you start a publishing company? I mean, what's the story there? And 200 books, you said. So tell us a little bit about that journey.
I'm kind of attracted to lights that I see covered under a bushel, if you will. And so the company started in 2014 with what we called the sermon to book method. And the idea was that if you've gone through a sermon series with a pastor, you probably have said this to the pastor, like, you have to write this down, you have to turn this into a book. And I realized that there was a lot of incredible messages collecting dust on a shelf. And so I said, we could turn this into a sermon to book method. And that's where we got started, helping pastors turn their sermons into books. And little did I know that God had bigger plans, where now a lot of Christian leaders were coming and saying, hey, do you only do this for pastors? And I thought, oh, interesting. A lot of people still have everything inside them. And mostly the people I talk with, that's been there for 5 or 10 years. And they say, I've prayed about this, God's nudged me, but I've never actually taken a step because I don't know how to write. And that's where we got to step in. And now it's culminated into Renowned Publishing, where we get to go into organizations and tell their story. Because I think we have a great problem with the great resignation, the silent quitting of, I believe it was Sean today. Excuse me if I'm not getting the name right, but he said if people don't see purpose in it, they don't want to be a part of it. And story is how you find purpose. I told Jared here, I've told probably 3 people about Pure Flow, and the model was great, but it was when he got to that table that really made me think, I would go work for this company. I would go because I see the greater purpose.
We're hiring.
Good.
Is this like an Oprah moment?
And I heard the story, and I think that we need, as organizations, to tell our story more often, and not only that, but codify it, because we're living libraries, and in most businesses have a story that, once the founder calls it and doesn't share their story fully, that's a closed library. It's not going to be open again. And so to be able to walk in and do that gives me a great, great purpose that we are capturing the past to help us move us into the future.
And I would say too, like if you I know there's tons of business owners in the room, so I'm privileged just to be sitting here with you. But one thing that we've learned, and I'm talking about my generation, you've got to be intentional about telling the story of why you exist. And if you don't, you'll become obsolete by not being able to backfill people as people are retiring out or leaving the company. People genuinely want to be a part of something that matters, and you guys have heard that over and over. I think the challenge sometimes is that we're not doing a good job at communicating that outwardly about why we exist. We're talking about what we do and how we do it, but we're not talking about who we are and why we're doing it. And that's the heartbeat that, if you will, allows the hands and the feet and the mind to operate. It's the blood that's pumping through your body. And so you've got to be, I think, strategic about that. And it's something that we face all the time because, like I said, we're hiring a lot of people. And even in Africa, like, you can pay well and it attracts people. But it is the fact that we're trying to do something that's beyond just work, that's beyond just taking a paycheck, that is what attracts people to come and stay and work the long hours and invest and tell the story and bring their friends to also work alongside you. So.
That's great. So that's kind of turned to something. Spencer, looked like you were going to say something and follow on with that, or say, you just talked about purpose and the why. So what's kind of your why, Spencer?
Yeah, so, I talk to people and I say, like, our North Star is the Wells, and that's our why. And some people would say, well, it's a cooler company. Like, what does that have to do with Wells? Like a marketing brain is like, how can we tie that together? And, sorry about the mic. I'm never good at these things. But, marketing brand is like, how can we tie those two things together? And, that's something we've worked on, getting that story. Like you were talking about how important that is. But I've definitely found on a smaller scale, as we're hiring people, as we talk about, again, I call it our North Star, like the reason I wake up and go do what I do, the reason I've taken the risk I've taken, the reason that the past 6 years, almost 7 years now of my life have looked the way they do is because of that why, because of what I see could be done in some of these communities. When I talk about that message, I've found people are willing to take pay cuts and come work with what we're doing because they really are buying into what we're doing. And to your point, it's not just about the money. We're always seeing, money can buy you this, money can buy you that. But when people really buy into that vision and that purpose, it's much sweeter than any amount of some large paycheck could give you.
I heard a very successful 27-year-old tell me recently, and I wrote it down in a quote. We were having a Zoom call, and he just said, off the cuff, without thinking about it, he said, millennials and Gen Z would rather starve with their friends than do something without purpose. And that stuck with me.
Yeah, so let's talk about purpose a little bit. We're at the Fellowship of Companies for Christ International. We've spoken a little bit about being faith-driven and faith-driven entrepreneurs. What how do you develop? What is the purpose of PureFlow? What is the purpose of Renown, of Rugged Road? What's that why that you all have been talking about why your companies exist? How do you connect your faith with your entrepreneurship? I think each of you all are kind of built to be entrepreneurial and be really faithful in that. So how do you connect your faith and work and the purpose behind what you do? Any of you all?
Yeah, so our purpose is to create opportunities for people to thrive. And so the initial, I think the old school way to look at that, if we wrote that out on our website, you would say, oh, that's for all these people I just told you about, the almost 2,000 men that are coming every day to pay off their loan. And yes, it is that. But when we made that purpose, and that was kind of a part of our vision, was that it wouldn't just be for them. So we talk about, when I'm talking with our director of people and culture, we're talking about hiring people, and we're talking about retention of our team members. We're saying, how are we creating an opportunity for them to thrive? How are we creating an opportunity for their families to thrive? If their kids are not getting good educations, then I think we're failing at living that purpose out. And then ultimately, it's spiritually. How are our team members thriving? How are our members thriving? And then we also look, and we can talk about this in a second on the investment side, but we look at all of our partners that have helped us get where we are today, and we ask the exact same question. How are we creating opportunities for them to thrive? And that's kind of looking at the investment table a little differently, I think. It's typically like this push and pull, this dating relationship between investor and entrepreneur. And we use the word partner instead of investor because we want to say, how can we create opportunities for them to thrive? Whatever God's put in their table right now and they want to use it, how are we creating opportunities for them and their families to thrive? And then we ask that for our family, like how are we creating opportunities for Colin and his wife Caroline and me and my wife Megan to thrive in the way that we're setting up everything in the business and thinking about our faith growing in the way that we are looking at growing the business. How are we thinking about being intentional and pursuing our wives? How are we being intentional about getting in the Word of God, praying and fasting together? And those are all things that kind of all sum up that purpose, creating opportunities for people to thrive.
Great. Caleb, how do you put purpose in?
Jesus told stories, and I think we should too. A mentor of mine recently said that when God works, he uses people. And every time God works, there's a story there. And I think the beauty of story is that it invites people to get somewhere on their own. It's been shown that story sticks, as opposed to, let's say, if we put 4 bullets on the screen and tried to memorize it. Story sticks. And when you hear a story, it's not just someone telling you what to think, how to think, what to do, where to go. It is putting something in their mind that sticks, that allows them to think about it, allows them to think through their own perspectives, and allows them to get they're on their own. Because for something to truly stick, to get into your heart and soul, you have to get there on your own with Jesus. And story is the perfect vehicle for it. A lot of people think they don't have something to say. And I'm like, if you have a story, you have something to say. Because I guarantee you, there are incredible life lessons. There's incredible, one of my favorite things was to hear my grandpa tell stories. And they stuck, but thinking about them now and what they meant, well, now that's turned into a lesson or a compass, a guiding North Star for me that I don't just think of as a directive, but as a story, and how I get to model that in my own life and my own circumstance from my own, generation I've been born into.
Great. So Spencer, back to that question: how do you connect your faith to your work? As you find purpose as you go every day, how do you live that out at Rugged Road?
Yeah, so very similar to what Jared was talking about. Something that I'm passionate about is creating opportunities for those who wouldn't otherwise have them. And the way I see that, when I think about, Jesus left the 99 to go find the one, or the shepherd left the 99 to go find the one. I think about, for me, across my lifetime, I've always been very entrepreneurial, but I've struggled with school and things like that from time to time, and finding my purpose within Rugged Road really just changed my life in a lot of ways. And, from a hiring perspective, I've looked for opportunities to pull people into the business, and, anyone watching this who works for us hopefully would agree, to create opportunities for them where they can really thrive, and try to lead in a way that kind of inspires them and might be a little bit different than some leaders they would see that don't have a faith. And I think that translates over to what we're trying to do with the Wells, and like Peace Prep Academy, some schools, inner city school in Atlanta, trying to do what I could do as we grow to kind of give a hand to create opportunities for those who might not otherwise have them. So kind of a generic statement, but it works in my mind for what we're doing from a hiring perspective, what we're doing with our employees, what we're doing with partners, and what we're trying to do from a giving back standpoint.
Great, thank you. So let's move a little bit to the kind of the formation. Each of you all have, capitalized. You had to raise money. There's folks in here that are both business entrepreneurs that have gone through that work, and also investors. We're going to talk to some investors a little bit later. So how did you go about that? Jared, we'll start with you. How do you capitalize your company? I'm thinking motorcycles, asset-based lending, banking in Uganda.
Risky business.
Yeah, you probably don't walk into your corner Wells Fargo and say, hey, I need to borrow money. How did you go about that?
That would be super nice, convenient, and easy if we could. They would laugh at us, and they would ask a lot of questions, and then laugh at us again. So, like I said, I didn't know that this space, you guys might have heard it as BAM, or now we've kind of got this term, faith-driven investor, entrepreneur, around it, or impact investing. There's a group you guys probably know of, NCF. They birthed a group called Impact Foundation, which is basically just a really unique vehicle that allows people to invest donor-advised money into socially good for-profit companies. So socially good for-profit companies. And so that's a big change for people now to be able to allocate resources that God's entrusted them with into businesses like ours that are either U.S.-based or international. And so we kind of found, we had a first adopter, I would call him. We had a meeting in Chicago end of 2020, and we asked, hey, could this model work? And because at the time we had 80 motorcycles, it was just over 2 years ago, or just under 2 years ago, and he was like, yeah, I'm in. And so we started there, and then we opened up kind of I guess you would call it like an opening round. It wasn't really like a seed round because we weren't giving away equity, but we raised some debt. And somebody, I remember sitting there, and we left, and we thought, wow, we just got $10,000. This is awesome. The business is going to blow up. But really what it did for us was it showed us that it was possible. And so from there, we went to kind of some of his friends and impact funds, and we started raising debt to finance asset-based financing to finance more motorcycles, because that's really how we scale. There's really not a market shortage right now. I said 1 million. We serve just under 2,000 right now, and so there's plenty of people that want to own these assets. So that's kind of how our journey started. Was we went right to this space to start telling the story, and the story, like, it captivated my heart, it captivated other people's hearts, and they wanted to put resources behind it.
Great. Great. Spencer, I know yours is a little bit different. How'd you go about raising money? What do you do? I mean, to create the company needed some resources.
Well, I'd say like many things, there's probably a common theme here, that I do things a little bit differently. I tell people I'm a simple man. My daddy is a roofer and I sell coolers. And being that, I call myself a simple man, at first, we kind of bootstrap things. I'd actually started the company with another guy, and we'd saved some money from high school. He had, traded stocks and done all this crazy stuff, and I'd started all these little businesses. So that was kind of how we got like our seed capital. And then, we ran into some trials from there, lost some of that money with some engineers and things like that. But from there, we launched a Kickstarter. So I don't know if people are in this room are familiar with that platform, but it's a great platform where you can actually pre-sell products before you go into manufacturing to help pay for tooling and things like that. So we launched a Kickstarter. We're fully funded in the first 24 hours, and that was just a really exciting way to get the business started. But from there, manufacturing business is very capital intensive, more than I could ever imagined. So we went to raise money, and the first investor I got, going back to when I said, I would just meet with anyone and everyone that would listen to me or even just take a meeting with me. There was a guy in the community around Athens, a very successful guy who owned a chain of retail stores. And I was just meeting with him, talking about our needs, and he had just heard everything that we were doing and going through, and back to our purpose, and just believed in what we were doing. So back to being a simple man, I said, hey, I think this is what the business is worth. Do you want X% for this? And that was how I raised my first round of capital. And then from there, we've raised 2 additional rounds, and those were more of kind of a group thing from more of, I guess you could call that like private equity kind of thing. But that was a little bit more structured, but still just very kind of straightforward, walking through that process. And I think the key to all that for me has just been, I'm smart enough to know what I don't know, so finding people that can help me walk through that process, and then also just like brutal honesty and transparency. So, again, sometimes I can be kind of an unorthodox, goofy kind of guy, but just very honest, very true about what we're trying to do. And I think that has worked really well as we've gone through these different raises, and we've gone through a lot of struggles. Like over the past couple of years, with COVID, shipping containers, and crazy different things that have happened, you've helped me walk through a lot of that stuff. I think that's been the key, just those open, honest conversations.
Great. So you mentioned a challenge. So why don't you all can be thinking about challenges a little bit here. Caleb, why don't you tell us challenges of being young, of starting a business, of persevering through. Just what comes to mind when you think of challenges that you faced and how you've overcome them?
I tell people that I'm a writer who God called to do business, meaning I don't know how to do business. And when God first called me to step away from my job as a journalist, I talked about it with people in my life, my dad, others, and the common consensus was, I'm not seeing a path forward here. You can go to your mom and dad and say, I want to be an artist of any kind. It's pretty tough. And I remember thinking that, no, like God's called me to do this. I know He has. And I remember thinking that, I want my dad, my friends, others to believe in the results before they could see it. And I was out covering a basketball game, and I got a call from a friend who said, hey, I've got something coming up for you. And rewind 3 months before that. Basically, I was telling Brittany, I said, I don't know what's going on. And we weren't raised in a church environment that listened to God very much. But God started talking to me. God will find you whether you're in an environment that's conducive to it or not. And I got this surreal feeling that something was happening in mid-March. And I was telling Brittany this because I had never felt that before. I never felt the Holy Spirit truly prodding me with such preciseness. And sure enough, I'm out in February now. I'm covering a basketball game, get a call from a friend who I hadn't talked with in a year. And he said, hey, like, I heard you want to write. And I'm like, yeah. And he says, well, I think I have a job coming up that actually might be really good for that. And I go, really? And I go, well, when does it open up? He said, mid-March. And I was like, okay. And it was actually at retirement apartments, of all things. A job that didn't pay anything, but covered all of our overhead. And so we go and we interview for the job, Brittany and I. As I walked away, I said, I kind of did the Gideon thing. I was like, God, give me this job, and then I'm going to step out of my job as a journalist. And immediately I felt the Holy Spirit say, that's not how it's going to work. And I realized that I was doing to God kind of what I wanted others to do for me. God wanted me to believe before there was results. And so I took a drive. That's kind of my thing when I'm thinking and talking with God. And the next day I went in and I put in my resignation. And then 3 days later, we got the job at these retirement apartments. And equipped with $1,000, I started my business working as a night manager on $600 a month. And we've now grown it to, we've done about $3 million over the years.
Great.
That's we talked about this before. I think we've all kind of, as most of you, have taken some risk in getting into the entrepreneurial journey. It's part of it. It's in the description, I think. I remember when I first heard the story, I told my partner Colin, I'm in. Don't have to pay me anything. I've got 40 hours a week, and we did that for about 2 years. And it was because the story was more important to me than the paycheck. And I really just wanted to tell the story to people. Thinking about challenges, how many of you ran a business through COVID? All right, either you slept for a long time and then you woke up, or you're being honest with us here. I think that we faced a challenge early on. I don't know if you track world news much, but in Africa specifically, a lot of the countries just completely shut down because the healthcare was not built to be able to handle it if there was a bad outbreak. Like in Uganda, I think it was about 50 ICU rooms in the whole country, 48 million people. And so you've got a big issue there. If a lot of people need ventilators, you get a problem real fast. And so anyways, with that, we have a business that's a high-touch business, if you will. People that are driving motorcycles, our guys give 40 to 60 rides a day on average. So they're touching a lot of people. And if you've ever seen them, it's not just normally one guy on the bike. It's like a whole family behind you. So you've got really close contact with everybody. And so the first thing that happened when they shut down schools for 2 years, by the way, and then they said no boda business. So people just weren't going anywhere. And so this was June and July. We had just taken on our first round of debt. And so in our business, we take on debt, we buy motorcycles, and we deploy the capital within 3 or 4 days so that we're not sitting with it in risky business area. And the debt's deployed, meaning we need people to pay us next week so we don't have people defaulting on the loans. But then none of the people that we were serving could work. And so this created a massive challenge for us. And I'll say this, if you're the chief problem solver at your company, then you should hire more problem solvers. It's actually one of our 4 core values is to move towards solutions, not think about the problem, but recognize it and move towards solutions. And we hire people on that because we know situations like this are going to happen, and all the more when you work in Africa. But this happened, and our team, who first core values serve with purpose, are driven by that, saw a problem, and they wanted to move towards solutions. We ended up feeding, I think, 250,000, we deployed about 250,000 meals. We're not a meal organization. We let everyone, if they couldn't pay, not pay for 2 months, and we fed all of our members and their families at least 2 meals a day for 2 months. And that was because our team, it wasn't our brilliant idea. Like I said, we're not the chief problem solvers. We're part of it, but they came to us and said, this is what we need to do. This is the right thing, and we can do it. And there was a lot of prayer and fasting from our team, and just a lot of moving towards solutions. So I would say that's one of the biggest challenges we face, is kind of that we went on the limb, put debt into the business, had our name on checks with people, and then that happened, as I think God would want to test our faith, and in that grow our obedience to please Him.
It's great. It's great. Spencer, what's the challenge or two have you had? You've had some unique challenges over the last couple of years.
Yeah, so, there's a bit of a laundry list of challenges, as you guys know, and everyone in this room starting different businesses. But, if I had to pick one, it'd probably be the fact that, 2 years ago, we kind of did a bigger capital, or about a year and a half ago, bigger capital raise. And we were coming, on the coattails of COVID, and shipping containers, some of the people in this room might know, went from like $4,000 a container door to door to about $30,000 a container. So for us, that means that they went from, less than $10 a cooler to over $60 a cooler. And for me, the knee-jerk reaction was something like that. It's like, oh my goodness, like how are we going to survive this? And that's where I'll pause that story and go back to the fact, for me, it's a little surreal as we talk about challenges, the opportunity of me be able to sit on the stage right now. Because a couple years ago, or I guess 2 years ago to be specific, I was invited to this conference, which was just kind of a radically life-changing moment for me. Because, while I'd always thought that we wanted to do the wells and, I had a lukewarm faith, I was really looking at things as if Rugged Road was my business. And I was going to use it as a tool to do good and a tool to give back. And I was going to, take on the cooler market and do all these great things. And it was actually Bill Job, who might be sitting in this room, was giving a talk here. And he was like, raise your hand, like if you believe in God and, do you believe He created the universe and everyone in it? I'm like, yes, I'm kind of following along. And he's like, well, if you believe someone's that powerful, like, do you really think he's in heaven scratching his head thinking like, how do I get more money to do good? And it like hit me. I was like, that's a really good point. Like he's probably not struggling on that front. But the point he was trying to make, or at least what I took from it, and maybe if you're in this room, maybe I'm paraphrasing wrong, but was that God's in control and it's His business and we're a steward of it and He will do what He wants with the business. And so I share that to say that before really embracing that concept, I lived with a lot of anxiety. Like I'd never really had anxiety growing up and things like that, but as the business started to grow and we did start to face these challenges and problems, I was, taking a bunch of courses at UGA and taking on a bunch of debt, taking on a bunch of risk, and I was getting to the point where I was literally laying on the floor, holding my chest, like just in a ton of fear and anxiety. And then fast forward to another talk, I think it was Dr. Blackaby was saying that in life, when we're feeling anxious or we're feeling afraid or we're feeling some of these negative emotions, we should look at them as a check engine light or a warning light on the dashboard of our truck, because it means that we've forgotten God's in control and we're not turning things over to Him. And I even get like chills through my whole body as I talk about that, because it's awesome how you can just feel the Holy Spirit in this room, and that's part of why I've come back the past 2 years. But tying all that back in to the problems with the shipping containers, I think that's the kind of thing that truly before this experience and before just kind of flipping the way I looked at things, I think it would have like taken me out, which sounds so dramatic, but like I don't know what would have happened in the business. I'd know certainly like for me, that amount of pressure probably would have just crushed me. I would have been miserable to be around, and it would have been really difficult. And it still was difficult, and I'm a human being, I'm very imperfect. But whenever I can remind myself, like He has a greater plan, and whether Rugged Road goes on to be a $100 million business, or whether it crashes and burns and teaches me a lesson and I can use that to demonstrate the love of Jesus in that process, it doesn't matter. Like He's in control, and when I really press into that and believe that, there's almost like no stress with these challenges. So I know that was like a huge segue from your question, but I wanted to address that because back to that container thing, that's probably one of the biggest things I faced in the past 2 years, because we're talking, that was over a $500,000 swing in shipping, and we did 1.2 million in sales that year. So it was pretty brutal what that did to us. But again, just trusting Him, walking through that process made it entirely different. So,
Great. So with a few minutes left, I'd love to just kind of hear from all of you, what do you think's been kind of the most important part of growing your company? You had an idea, you've had a vision, you might have had technology involved, shipping, finance, capital, people in your life. Jared, what do you think's been the most important part along your journey?
Yeah, so I mentioned this earlier. We don't reference our investors as investors. We reference them as pure flow partners. And there was a chapter 1 of Philippians. Paul's talking to the church there, and he talks about this partnership in the gospel and how it encourages him so greatly. And that had kind of been on the back of my mind before we had our very first investor call, which is what we were going to call it. And I remember thinking, that's what's happening here. God's saying there's a story I'm writing that's far bigger than any one of you. Pure flow is a small thread in a small blip of time and space when I'm thinking about eternity. And he's allowed us to be a part of stewarding that story. And the same thing is true for every person that was showing up to that call. And so I would say the most important thing is partnership. We really do value that immensely. Colin and I talk all the time, and we've told our wives when we signed that 40-page operating agreement between he and I thought, I didn't think like I'm signing myself away to this guy. I felt like, man, God, I'm so grateful that you would give me a partner to walk this journey with who's aligned in faith, who wants to lead his family well, who wants to love Jesus more than anything else, and also just loves this business. And so we've kind of taken that approach between he and I, but also as we get more people around the table's getting fuller. We look at that, and there's that, I was thinking about it this morning, there's an African proverb, funny enough it came from Africa, but it says if you want to go fast, go alone, right? It says if you want to go far, what does it say? Go together. And what's funny is, I feel like we've gone fast and far, and we've done it with partners. And I don't think that looking back, we would try to do it any other way at this point. And so that's why we're always trying to find more partners, because when you get more people at the table whose core focus is to love Jesus and make him known, the other things will take, they'll take place. Everything will kind of trickle down from that. And so that's been the biggest thing for us. And it's amazing what you can learn when you're not the smartest person at the table, and you keep getting people that have more experience, more faith to sit around you and do the journey with.
That's great. That's great. Spencer, what about you? What do you think's been?
Well, I mean, you put me in a hard spot here because Jared keeps taking my points. But no, I mean, very similar to what he's saying. I was talking about a little bit earlier, but just finding those mentors and, like he was saying, people that, have kind of been there, can see around corners, have deep faith. I mean, Chad, you've been a huge person in my life over the past 2 years that has run businesses, has a deep faith, knows how to walk the walk, talk the talk, and just everything in between. So finding people like yourself and lots of other mentors in my life, we've gotten farther in the past 2 years than we did in the first 4.5, solely through that. Again, I think that's such a big piece of the puzzle here is surrounding yourself with not only people who are successful in the business world, but people who have deep faith and they walk that faith out. So that's been really important to us. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend I've done that perfectly. And it's like, oh yeah, we've already accomplished that. Like that's something I'm continuously striving for day after day after day. And it's a continuous walk. And I'm so grateful to have you walking through that with me and other people in this room and maybe some people watching this. Because it's been a really exciting past 2 years to see what's happened. And I'm excited to see what happens over the next 5, 10, 50 years.
Caleb, your thoughts around that?
Both Jared and Spencer hit it. It's about people. And frankly, I'm coming out of the other side of that, what that looks like. First 6, 7 years of business, really tried to do it all on my own. And that led to a lot of stress, anxiety, feeling as though things were on my shoulders. And then God told me very specifically, I believe it was 2020, you need to stop. Like this is truly, it's my business. You get to be the manager. And I'm like, man, that sounds pretty good. Like, that means you get to tell me what to do, and but you're the big man responsible? And that led me to FCCI, Praxis, Lion's Den, Community. And I had a fun talk with Brittany not long ago. I said, look at this. And I showed her my calendar and the places we would be and the talks I was having with people. And every single one of them was tied to what God had started stirring in me. Every relationship, mentors, opportunities, clients, everything came from people. And God, we were made from community for community. And if you're starting a business, you're still doing a business, you've been at it for a while, don't go it alone. Look for others who are, you don't want to be the smartest one in the room. You don't want to be the best prayer in the room. You don't want to be, surround yourself, because they're out there. And God allowed us to be a team to go far.
Great.
Can I give an invitation real quick? Not like a y'all come to the front invitation, but I was just thinking about this room, and like we've all talked on it, and we're stages behind, I think, a lot of people here in regards to just experience and how you're leading your business and your families and communities. The invitation is there, and there's many more than the three of us that are seeking to go on this journey, where we say, God, you take this business, and we want to be stewards of it. And I think that word partner is important for every person in this room. If you're not doing that, to think about how you could be doing that, because you have a wealth of resource. Most of it is experience and your story that can be brought to the table, and people would love to pull up a seat for you if you'll just show up to the house, and would love to walk the journey with you guys.
So I think that's a great place to wrap up. We've only got 3 or 4 minutes. You can take a look at the clock, and I'd love just to tell, if you have a message to the crowd about your generation, being an entrepreneur, an ask of the crowd, what's a final thought that you'd like to leave folks? Spencer?
Yeah, no, I think one thing that was really clear to me when I came here 2 years ago is, this room, I almost don't even feel worthy to be sitting on this stage. And I'm not just trying to be nice. This room is filled with people who've been here for 10, 20, 30 years. And you guys are business owners. You have walked the walk. You have just profoundly gone deep with your faith. And the results of making that commitment year after year after year are pretty incredible. And again, with that invitation, I think there's a lot of people that could greatly benefit from just the knowledge that's just exuding from the people in this room. And I know I certainly have. And I know there's a lot of people that desperately need that. So from a business standpoint, but also from a faith standpoint, and how do you tie the two together?
Great, thank you. Caleb?
Keep modeling the Jesus way for us. I'm humbled to be in this room with all of you. The experience, the stories, and I say Jesus model in that keep sharing your stories, keep seeking people out, especially younger generation, because we need guidance. We need a North Star. So seek us out. Tell us your stories, and do that thing that Jesus did a lot. Ask a lot of questions, because it's a great way of saying, hey, you're kind of doing this wrong, without saying it in that way. Asking questions, and let us get there by ourselves. Let it be our idea, if you will. I find that's an incredible way, and it's what my mentors do to me all the time. And now I go, oh, you're doing that thing again. I'm like, yep, he is.
Well, great, guys. So what I heard, just to kind of wrap up here, first, I hope you've been inspired. You've got 3 of many, many just incredible entrepreneurs that are coming from, Gen Z and millennials and above. So for me, it gives me a lot of faith in the future. It gives me a lot of hope for the future. But what I think you literally just heard all 3 saying is, we need help. We heard Rick Fisher this morning. We heard Dr. Carson last night. We heard Sean Dunn a few minutes ago say that we need you. This is an active sport. Life is a team sport. And everyone in here can mentor. Everyone here needs to look around and see who is the person that they're walking beside. Who are they challenging? Who are they supporting? Who are they investing in? We're going to talk about investment in our next section here. But hope you all have enjoyed meeting these guys, and it will give you a vision of the future and a way to engage the next generation. And so thank you all for coming. Thank you, Jared and Caleb and Spencer. They'll be around. Get in touch with them. There's other folks that are in the room, and just engage the next generation. So thank you all.
Lip, Spencer, and Jared for that wonderful insight into all that God is leading you to accomplish for His glory. Bonnie Mock, someone that's online with us today, she texted, she's one of our FCCI faithfuls, and said, these guys are sewing threads that are accomplishing things together that no one else can do but God through them. So thank you, Bonnie. We are honored to know you better, how to pray for you, and I think we'd all agree that there has been much to be gained from each of your stories. We're going to be taking a short break to reset for our next panel discussion that starts at 11:25 a.m. Eastern. In the meantime, our online guests will have an opportunity to hear more about this year's FCCI conference and about the many ways you can engage with FCCI. We'll see you back here live in 15 minutes.
Which chair do you want? Hang on 1 second. We're still doing live right now. 1 second. It's not live in here, but it's live. Their business is a platform for ministry and transform the world for good. Are we good, guys?
How does one lead a company for Christ? Every day that question is being asked by more and more business owners and chief executives around the world. Comparatively little has been written on the subject, and you rarely hear a sermon on it. From this realization began the development of the Fellowship of Companies for Christ, to equip and encourage Christian business owners and company chief executives to lead their companies for Christ.
These go way back to the beginning of FCCI. Yeah. Bert Stumberg and Shirley and Bill and Ron Blue, Larry Burkitt, Henry Blackaby,
Howard Dayton, and Terry Parker.
And so those are all guys that you and I partnered with to start this ministry.
I remember those early days when you got Larry Burkitt and me and Jim Moy and Thomas and Ben.
Yeah.
And together, and we didn't know what we were doing, but we just started looking at Scripture to see what it had to say about running a business.
Well, it's been a great journey.
Amen. Amen.
I mean, FCCI really is the pioneer of marketplace ministry. That changed my whole purpose of being in business. It really empowered me to go out and have an impact on my community. In 1992, God gave me the idea of starting an evangelistic prayer breakfast to the technology community. And 30 years later, and we're getting ready to have our 30th annual high-tech prayer breakfast, and literally thousands of lives have impacted and changed for Jesus Christ as a result of the prayer breakfast. But it's all because of the vision that we received from through FCCI, and I am so grateful that God chose me to be a part of that journey. I mean, that's so rewarding.
No, we don't have that much time, you guys.
My age now, when you look back, and what's important, it's only those things that will last for eternity. It's changed lives.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're at a mini break right now. We would like everybody to be seated down at 11:25.
With other Christian brothers.
We will rebroadcast or start the broadcast at 11:25. So please be seated by then. We are at a mini break right now.
The question is, did they
Please
hear the
take
call,
advantage of it.
and then did they answer it? I dare say we've not dreamed the things as big as the Lord would like us to dream. We need to adapt to the day we're in. We need to meet people where they are. It may be a mountaintop, it may be a valley. And FCCI reaches out to them wherever they are. And so I think we need to be bold just like the disciples needed to be bold. We're empowered to serve, to bring the world to Christ. We need to take that empowerment and run.
those who can transform the world for Christ.
Let's begin to think through what it means to be a Christian who leads a company.
What are you seeking? That was the first question Jesus asked of his followers. Through that question, Jesus was pursuing the underlying motive for their desire to be his disciples. That same question remains at the core of understanding our true purpose and our desire to contribute to kingdom endeavors today, to be his disciples. If you really want to understand your potential kingdom impact through your involvement with FCCI, you just have to come and see.
What I've found in this journey and with business leaders is this irresistible desire to just be in fellowship, be on mission together. But at the same time that we're on mission, we are desiring to figure out some different lanes in our lives, really trying to figure out how to make a difference in the world, to do good in a sense from their business perspective and their platform, whether it be internally, externally, or both. But what I see FCCI being able to do is create environments where business leaders can come together. The pinnacle event is the annual conference. Business leaders from around the country and around the world convene and gather for 4 nights and 5 days and fellowship and hear from great speakers. And then there's the journey group experience where it's men and women doing life on life, whether it be a theme-based discussion or mentor groups or getting in God's word and praying together and sharing what's on our hearts. But the areas that I think are really a phenomenal opportunity for FCCI is what we're calling a venue event, is where it's an environment where 50 or 100 business leaders at all ages, different seasons of life, can come and hear a speaker, but to fellowship. Today we experienced a pop-up event, and literally they are opportunities that are going to just pop up in different places around the country. And then we've got these curated events where about 5-6 times per year, it's a special 24 to 36 hour opportunity to go on a deeper dive with business leaders. God designed us to be in relationship, to connect, and to be on mission together. When business leaders connect, we share, we're transparent, we're open, and we learn and glean from each other. And the fruit of that, the outcome is that we're gonna be able to do life with our kids and be available to our employees and hopefully have a God-centered, God-focused business where we can make a difference in our communities or across the country or somewhere around the world.
Most people, every time an event comes up, they're like, oh man, I don't have the time to do this. I really can't make this happen. But almost every single time when we leave, it's like, wow, I am so glad I made the time to do this. I can't believe I almost didn't come. I mean, we do stuff that's fun. We don't sit around and do things that aren't fun. I mean, who wants to do that? When you are a business leader or a business owner, the buck stops with you. And a lot of times you have to project strength, you have to be the one in charge, and you can't let your guard down. You can't open up because it might freak some people out in your company. And so when you come to FCCI events, what's really awesome and my very favorite thing is that you sit there and you go, wow, there's somebody like me. There's somebody that feels what I feel, that thinks some of the things that I feel. I'm not by myself. I'm not alone. I have other people. These are my people. And it's someplace that I can be me. So the reason I like these events personally is because when I go, number one, I get to meet new people. It gets me out of my regular routine. A couple of times I've had different business ideas, or I've had different ideas of how to approach something, or I've had a problem I didn't know how to handle, and I got into a conversation with somebody that I met who was able to help me kind of talk through and process how to resolve that problem. I've had some conversations about my family, how things have been helpful that I've applied on parenting my kids or improving my marriage or improving my walk. If you're younger, by going and getting involved, even if there's some older people that are outside your age group, they're going to be able to give you a different perspective that you don't have, and that's going to be incredibly valuable for you. It's the same with anything in life. The more you put in will dictate how much you get out of it. So if you want to get a lot of it out of FCCI, you need to be involved. You need to go put yourself out there. You need to do some events. I would just encourage everybody to jump into one, invite somebody, and that's how we spread the word of God, and that's how we spread this, and that's how we connect to each other, and that's how we bear a lot of fruit.
Come and see all that God might do through you and in you because of your connection, collaboration, and contribution through FCCI. We need champions like you who are ready to transform the world through Christ. So what are you seeking? Come and see. Connection. We're all designed for relationship. And as Christian business owners and leaders, developing healthy and lasting relationships is critical in achieving kingdom impact and business growth. Here at FCCI, our name starts with fellowship. And for over 43 years, we've been serving Christian owners and leaders as a highly respected platform where meaningful relationships can flourish. And as we look toward the future, we continue to innovate in our pursuit to transform the world through Christ, providing engaging experiences and points of connection through curated events, venue events, conferences, retreats, journey groups, the FCCI Connect app, and more.
The key about fellowship is you gotta have fellowship with people who get it. You get to a place like FCCI, you just get a moment to stop and breathe and know, all right, I'm surrounded by like-minded people. I'm surrounded by people who get it. Because it's one thing to be an entrepreneur, it's one thing to own a business and lead a business. It's a completely different thing to do that with the intentionality of, this is my mission. And that's really the secret sauce, is getting believers together who say, God owns my business, and I'm not doing that perfectly, but I want to grow in how I live that out. Just like any other part of my life, what does it mean for me to follow the Lord and be a Christian business owner, a good steward of what He's given me? And it's not really even about the curriculum. It's not about a book study. It's about the relationship with other people who are going and pursuing Christ together in that position as a business owner. So my encouragement, and it's not something that I do perfectly every day by any means, but my encouragement is to say, the growth chart, the pro forma, the building of the team, to getting people to graduate through their leadership training, making sure you have dependable people, all these different things, putting out fires, whack-a-mole, all of that is secondary to the first thing, and that's a relationship with Christ. And so being able to be around other people who get that is an extremely valuable experience. The magnitude and the importance of being a business owner, an entrepreneur, and the stage and the level of influence that God has given to you is no small thing. And so take a little step, get in with some of those folks that can encourage you, and it will grow, and eventually you'll be bringing other people in, because that's how valuable it is and that's how much of an impact it can make on your life.
So come and connect with the FCCI family and find meaningful relationships with like-minded Christian business owners and leaders.
Welcome back for our second segment of live stream leader talks from the FCCI International Conference in Amelia Island, Florida. Our first segment this morning featured 3 faith-driven entrepreneurs who are committed to following hard after God and leaning into his desire to do exactly what our conference theme is all about, being empowered to serve others for God's glory. This second segment will feature faith-driven investment companies pursuing their calling to make a kingdom impact that will enable people to live out the FCCI vision to transform the world through Christ, one company leader at a time. Once again, enjoy the onstage conversation, and we're so glad you've joined us this morning.
Hello, I'm Chad Merrill, and we're here in Amelia Island at the FCCI conference. And I've got the privilege to interview and spend some time with Wes Lyons of the Eagle Venture Fund and Mike Arrieta of Garden City Advisors. And so we're glad you're here. We're going to talk about faith-driven investing and the impact that that has on this world. And so to get us started, I'm going to ask Mike, just tell us a little bit about yourself, how Garden City came about, and the vision behind it.
Absolutely. Good morning. Good morning. This is a beautiful place to have an event. Glad to be here today. So my story is a little different. I was the first one in my family born here in the U.S. My sisters, 2 older sisters, my mother and father are all from Puerto Rico. By the way, if you hear my voice crack a little bit, I had no voice the last 2 days, and then my daughter's coach did not show up to her first soccer game, so I played coach, so apologize, my voice goes in and out a little bit. So I was the first one born in my family here in Florida, actually, so back in my birth state. My father sold flan. Has anyone here ever had flan? It's really good. Y'all should put it for your dessert tonight if you don't have it. And so he sold flan on street carts on the corner of Miami. He did that until he sold furniture. I had a really bad stutter problem. It was God's blessing in my life. Thank God for a Florida governor, Governor Jeb Bush. He created a state disability grant for poor kids with disability. So I was a recipient of that. And that allowed me to go to private Christian school. 2 out of 3 kids, this is an interesting fact for you to never remember, or to always remember. Barna Research found this out. 2 out of every 3 kids that come out of poverty, it's directly correlated to them having a positive exposure. Just for them to see what is possible, just for them to see a whole new world, just for them to see families that are successful. So by me going to that school, I was able to see a whole different life, a whole different way of doing life. Kids that their parents held them accountable, parents who had their children study for SATs, parents who went to kids' sports games. So that really inspired me to say maybe there's a better way to live, and I really focused on that to try to say, how can I be successful in life so that my children don't have to suffer through what my sisters and I did. My father almost died when I was in high school, and that really changed my life. He went into a sugar attack and then a coma. He went on dialysis, pancreas transplant, kidney transplant, amputations. Then my mom got cancer. So it was really, really difficult for me. I decided at that point in time that I was going to try to support myself. So I started selling the world's best product, Cutco knives. Cutco's great. American made since 1949. If you need any, I'll be back there after the talk. But so I sold Cutco knives to put my way through high school and through college, support my family. I became the #1 salesperson in Cutco's history for a couple decades. And I did that to put myself through college. And then throughout college, I was totally lost, chasing the 3 Gs. And no, it was not generosity and God. It was girls, gold, and glory. And I chased those, all because I had deep, deep, deep insecurities. I looked in the mirror and I saw a poor, Hispanic, stutter kid with disabilities that was overweight. And I said, I'm going to try everything in my power to chase after what the world applauds, which is success. And so I did that pretty well. Then I went off after college, still not a believer, and I went to this place called Silicon Valley in 2007, or actually at this point, 2010. Joined a startup, didn't even know what a startup was, and to God's grace, we got acquired by Dell. And I was like, wow, now I'm on Mount Everest. Now I'm the chief of staff to one of the CEOs of Dell. Still completely lost, completely lost. And from there, my best friend told me about this guy named Jesus in 2013. I went on a mission trip to Haiti, and I got totally saved. I think it was just a straw that broke the camel's back. The Lord just was pursuing me. He pursues. He's the initiator, and we just have to be in an open response posture. And I was. And I think we all have a God-sized hole that only He could fill. So I became a believer in July 2013. It was incredible. And then I joined a small startup after that. It's called DocuSign. We were about 100 people. And by the time I left 6 years later, we went public for about $40 billion, about 5,000 to 6,000 people. I was the youngest ever vice president and general manager and all that good stuff. And then God really put something in my heart. We were on our baby moon celebrating the birth of our first child. And my wife and I were reading a book by a guy named John Mark Comer called Garden City. And I read another book, because I like to read 2 books at once, another book by Bruce Wilkinson called The Dream Giver. And this question really was posed on me, that if I could do anything in the whole world and money were no object, what would I do? If I could do anything in the whole world and money were no object, what would I do? And I've always known that answer. It's George. Where's my boy George on the somewhere? The gentleman that gave us his mic, George, the AV guy. That's what jazzes me up the most. It's people who do jobs that are not typically on stage. It's the backbone of America. It's the absolute foundation of America, these service workers, right? Or the person that was cleaning the plane this morning, or the janitors at the airport, or the front desk bellman here. I said, if I could do anything in the world, I would pursue the enrichment of all of these great jobs that go underutilized or undernoticed in our country. And I would give them dignity, respect, opportunity, give them an upward mobility path, and I would completely buy these companies that they work for and make them freaking awesome. I would put a Kingdom Chick-fil-A-like culture. I would do a Silicon Valley-like technology, and I would build an array of like 50 of the world's best investors you've ever seen that could help us grow these companies. And so that's what I launched in 2020.
Great, thank you. Wes, tell us a little of your story.
It's an awesome story, and I love what you're doing at Garden City. There's so much goodness there. We really stand, I think Deborah painted a picture this morning of what's really broken on Wall Street, that we've kind of optimized to broken in the way that we fund things. And we stand at the gap between what Deborah described there and Jared and guys like that are building the pure flows of the world, where Mike and the team are acquiring businesses in a whole way. We're actually acquiring little pieces and going on the journey with them at Eagle Venture Fund. And when people see who came together at the 4 general partners of Eagle Venture Fund, they kind of look at it and they go, all right, that guy grew up with dirt floors in the Dakotas and went into the military. That guy was a missionary kid, a couple Texans, and then you have a guy who grew up in Namibia and a guy who grew up in Switzerland as a Swiss banker, and they go, what? How did you guys come together? It's a motley crew in some respects, but really it was a shared love for Jesus and a friend that hired us to execute a private equity fund for him together. And we found that we absolutely loved working together, and we had a shared passion that something is deeply broken in finance, and there was a bunch of entrepreneurs that really need values, law, and capital to see their vision come to life. And when we wrapped up getting to do that fund, that was kind of a one-off. We had the classic, all right, we love working together conversation, and said, well, what are we going to do next? And the Lord put it on our hearts to launch what is now Eagle Venture Fund. And 5 years later, in 23 companies that we've gotten to partner with and bring capital together, we've gotten a chance to build 3 funds and some specialty funds alongside it. And the Lord's really blessed it. Not without a ton of tough moments along the way. We were sharing some entrepreneurial journey stories earlier of, I went 0 for 60 on my first 60 pitches. I'm not nearly as good at selling as Mike. And we didn't get paid for years and years. And really, the beauty of that in a finance, in the world of finance, is that we know when you haven't been paid for 5 years, you know when you're looking around, we're there because we love one another. We're there because we love the entrepreneurs, and there's a culture that's been formed that's about so much more than money. It's actually at its heart just listening to the Holy Spirit and saying, all right, Lord, where are you at work, and how do we join you? And it's been a really fun journey over these last few years.
Great. So if we start with a little bit of a level set, why don't you each tell us, so Mike, tell us just the blocking and tackling. What is Garden City? You're an investment company. What's your size? What's your investment thesis? What are you looking for? Just kind of tell us what Garden City is today.
Yeah, sure. To back up a little bit, well, I'll answer it really easily. Garden City is, think of Berkshire Hathaway, Warren Buffett's company, has a baby with ServiceMaster and Chick-fil-A. So we're trying to build a Berkshire Hathaway where we're a holding company, a redemptive people-first holding company, and we buy small to mid-sized family companies, small to mid-sized family-owned companies. So exactly what Deborah said of this country needs more $50 to $100 million funds that are buying and owning small local companies. That's what we do. So the way I got into this space is there's this term called search funders. Someone goes to business school, Harvard Business School, Stanford Business School, and they say, I'm coming out of getting my MBA, but I don't want to go work for Google or McKinsey. I actually want to go be an entrepreneur. And so it's called ETA, Entrepreneur Through Acquisition. And they go, I'm going to go buy a business, a small local business, because I'm younger and maybe a little bit more relevant to this day and age of modernization and culture and leadership and technology, I'm probably going to put up good returns, and I'll buy a janitorial business, pool business, IT service staffing, whatever it may be. And the vintage IRR, the vintage returns in this industry the last 3 decades is 36% returns. Pretty crazy. So I saw that. I said, that's crazy. There's this inefficient market, exactly as Deborah said. There's this inefficient market that's messy, that's making annual profits between $1 and $10 million a year of annual net true earnings, right? Actual profit that this business owner is making. So I said, I don't want to just buy one of those. I actually want to buy a whole array of them, put them under a redemptive holding company, and actually come alongside all these CEOs. One of our CEOs, Luke Duncan's here. Perfect example. They started their company 40 years ago, janitorial building maintenance company, Eastern Tennessee, best reputation. His father was a believer and said, I'm now 70 or 80 years old. I have to figure out someone to pass this baton to. I have to liquidate all of my equity in this business. I need to diversify my wealth. So I want to find someone that could adopt my baby. So he found Garden City. We bought that business in 60 days. And his son that's been in the business for a while, we just told him, you're CEO. So now he still preserves his culture, and now we come alongside him with technology. We just rolled out a new HR system 2 weeks ago. We're helping him hire new executive key leadership. We're helping them expand across state lines. That's what we do.
Great. And Eagle, tell us about Eagle, practically, size, fun, types of things you do.
Yeah, we're about 35 million of assets under management in 23 companies on our third fund. And what's a little bit different from other venture funds is we actually build a lot of the companies that we invest in. So about a quarter of the companies that we've put money into, one of the general partners helped co-found, or we have 2 labs that are building companies. And then about another third of the portfolio, we kind of picture it like bringing them into the garage and put them up on the jacks, and we'll actually like change out a transmission and see a real business model shift. Because at its heart, we're looking for this amazing combination of the ability to grow incredibly fast, but have a really deep and profound impact. Things like what PureFlow is doing, where every time that they sell, somebody is empowered. Something where the company, just the mechanism of it working with margin is bringing life to the people around them, whether it's casting the future of what the metaverse is going to be, or bringing health access to the poor, or combating modern day slavery, something that's inherently redemptive as they grow. So for us, it's finding those companies or building those companies, allocating capital to them, and then walking with them. It's being a coach. So the call of like, hey, I'm about to walk into the negotiation with Meta. Can I run through with you my strategy for how I'm going to go toe-to-toe with this massive giant, and being the call that they get so that we can say, yeah, that makes sense, or actually tweak it like this, something like that.
Okay, so we'll stay on that for just a second. So you're a venture firm, for those who know. So you're investing in startup and early stage companies and helping them to grow or scale. And also just tell us a little bit, you've rounded out, I think this year you've started a City and a Freedom. Tell us a little bit about what those are, City and the Freedom Fund.
Yeah, we have an amazing set of founders who are having an impact all over society, but it's kind of all over. It's health access for the poor. It's trying to scale it. You talk about mentorship, trying to figure out mentorship and exposure to a different way of life is often the thing that's breaking people out of cycles of poverty and incarceration. It's things like trying to scale up mentorship. But it's all over different types of impact. And we started to see themes develop, and we're all ex-military, and so we kind of think in this military way of, okay, we live in a battlefield, how are we going to make a difference? And for the City Fund, is the best way to describe it as a special operations team. And if you kind of, a special operations team made up of a series of businesses that can have a transformative impact on that community, though. So you might picture a rundown strip mall, and maybe it has 10 or 20 slots in it where you could, or storefronts where you could put a business. And the ability to come into a strip mall and say, we're going to fill these 10 storefronts with the most redemptive businesses we can possibly build, create, or move to this place. And so the ability to do that city by city. And so we've started in Dallas-Fort Worth, and the vision is to go to 100 cities and have 1,000 special operations teams working on the toughest problems, whether it's health access or housing or transportation or food, and to just innovate to the point where we can deploy these teams location by location. And it's really the same idea in combating slavery. The Freedom Fund is bringing together cadres of special operations business teams, like the one that we're working on right now is there's 50 million slaves in the world right now. And unfortunately, we all have a heart-wrenching footprint of how our purchasing power is fueling that. And it really is just a lack of transparency between us and the person who mined the cobalt that went into our phone. And we're investing up and down the value chain of it. It's actually a massive job that shouldn't be done by government, should be done by businesses to produce the massive databases of who owns what and the ultimate beneficial owners. And so we have a cadre of businesses going after that problem. So building them into teams that go after really tough problems. And that's why we're forming our funds around places and causes, basically.
Yeah, thank you. So Mike, why don't you do the same? You know, you kind of described venture and the thesis around that, and we refer to it as private equity, but you're actually a holding company, a little bit different structure. So if you tell us kind of the thought process behind permanent equity and Garden City and how you transition businesses, what's the thought process behind Garden City?
Yes. So we look as a business model in terms of private equity. Right, so the difference between venture capital and private equity, venture capital, typically y'all are the first money in to a startup-like company. There's a lot of different people on the capitalization table. They typically have a minority stake, and it's a new idea, right? High risk, high reward. Typical Silicon Valley is in Silicon Valley, out of 100 investments, 6 to 8 hit, the others fail, right? That's in Silicon Valley. I think West is probably better than that. For Garden City, private equity, typical what you hear, we are looking for businesses for us to take a significant stake. Ideally a majority stake, right? So 100% stake. Obviously, if the owner wants to roll over some equity, we'd love that. So if someone wants to sell us their HVAC business and says, hey, I probably have a year or two left in me, or I want to get out today, we would say, great, can we buy 100% of that business? Maybe you could roll over 5%, 10%. You know where the dead bodies are buried. You know what happens here during Christmas with this customer renewal, so forth and so forth. So we always try to keep a little bit of that owner to roll over some equity. The difference between us at a holding company and a private equity traditional fund is there's a lot. So I don't like private equity firms for the most part. There are some good ones out there, but for the most part, it's bad. If you just look at leverage buyout, how many people here have a ton of debt in their business? Probably not that many, right? When you look at all these great businesses that you vet, one of the first things they say is, we care for our people, we had no intention of selling, we have no debt, so forth and so forth. Private equity comes in, we look to sell as quick as humanly possible so our returns could be juiced up. We look to put as much debt as any bank could give us. and we look to bring in a new management team as quick as humanly possible. So we say, if it's not broken, don't fix it, right? So if you don't have a lot of debt, great. We don't want to put any debt. So across all of our companies right now, we have this much debt. We have zero debt. So we've never put a turn of debt on the business. There is healthy debt, but we don't like it, especially during times like these that show you about the uncertainty of the market. We feel great, right? We feel great. We don't have any covenants. The other thing about it is we keep the management team in place. If anything, we add to the existing management team. Like I said here with Luke Duncan, right now we're hiring a head of people. He's been operating a 300-400 person company with no head of people. So we're saying we're actually not going to try to juice our returns. We're going to actually take the returns that we could just pocket and give to our investors. And instead of doing that, we're actually going to reinvest more into the business. Another big common denominator of our holding company model is it's shared services. So right now we're hiring a full-time recruiter because our companies are paying hundreds of thousands of dollars for staffing firms, right? So we're saying, why don't we just hire someone, pay them a full-time salary at Garden City Holdco, and we use it as a shared benefit. CFO, same exact shared benefit. Head of people that we're probably going to hire next year, shared benefit. CTO probably in the future, a shared benefit. So we look at it that they're in the family of companies. It's a very popular model with holding companies. And then the last one is we buy with no intention of ever selling these companies. That's the biggest thing, is we are called to steward these companies. The only reason why these owners are selling these great companies that are throwing off $1, $2, $5, $10 million a year free cash flow is they're retiring for the most part. If they were going to live forever, if they had someone to succeed them that could pay them, they wouldn't. So why would we? If our entire mission is to buy these companies, to cultivate environments for people to thrive, prosper, and flourish, why the heck would we sell them? Like, we're able to do every day what we said is our dream. If I said before my dream is to buy companies and redeem them and create a place for people to thrive, prosper, and flourish, selling it would not do that. Selling it would just be maximizing future returns to now. And there's a lot of other things I could talk about in terms of tax benefits and everything else of long-term hold. But I think this theme of buy and hold forever, evergreen, permanent capital, over the last year, Chad, you and I have seen this skyrocket. So many more firms are coming out to do this now. So many more investors are saying, this is where I want my dollars to be. Also, if you pay out a deal to your LPs, now they have to figure out where to go reinvest that capital. So many times the best capital, it just continues to be deployed within the companies.
Yeah, thank you. So Wes, we're at the Fellowship of Companies for Christ International live stream and conference. We met, I believe, at the Lion's Den in Dallas. We've been involved in a couple of faith-driven investor conferences together. So there's this significant movement that's been growing across the country in faith-aligned, value-driven, purpose-built type companies, faith-driven investors. So I think you all would consider yourself in that, genre at Eagle Fund. So how do you blend that? How do you blend the concepts of financial returns? You've got responsibilities to investors to return their capital, and kingdom impact. How do you all think about that at Eagle?
That's a great question. And at the risk of being slightly awkward, I hope that over the years we'll actually start getting different questions, because we do such a good job that it'll switch to, you can hear all the tailwinds to the business models that you can start out with the idea of trying to create great jobs like you're doing at Garden City, and then look back and go, wait, that actually worked out in the long run. So the goal, actually, we started our tagline in 2017 was significant impact and significant returns. And we're talking about trying to really coin the phrase of just rejecting the tension between, there are concessionary returns, there are places where concessionary returns are needed and they're the right way to take something forward. But in our industry, picking amazing, highly scalable businesses that by their nature growing are producing more impact is actually, we see tons of virtuous cycles between having a huge impact and actually having a really great return. So it's actually, we see them hand in hand go going up and to the right. The learning hands talk about their quad slide of kind of impact on one axis and financial return on the right. We think it's the job of great fund managers, great holding companies to go to the top right of that. And then if people want to find concessionary returns, it's almost like, hey, prove you can do it amazingly in both axes, and then come off the returns a little bit because you're going to Kazakhstan or something where it's really hard. You shouldn't, we believe in our industry, there's so many tailwinds to high purpose businesses that want to transform society. Like we have, so the talent game is just so different. If your purpose is ending poverty in whatever city, you can get just a stream of folks coming out of Berkeley, Harvard, and all kinds of pedigrees that come in for half the salary that they can get at another place because you're making a difference. And that's just one of many virtuous cycles that we play into.
Thank you. So likewise, Mike, what are some of the values of Garden City? And how does that manifest in the companies that you all are buying, that you're partnering with, you're trying to infuse into? So how do you take the values that you've just shared here about having a redemptive edge, human flourishing, thriving that you want to bring? How do you infuse that into a company, or how do you balance that? Again, also knowing that you have investors and you have a responsibility for returns.
Yeah, that's a great question. Garden City is a collective of 50 investors investing as one, as you know, right? So that's really important. We're a collective of 50 families. I would say of those 50, 45 call themselves followers of Christ. So we're a collective of 50 families investing as one. In this room, we have the Mitchells, we have Dwayne Donner, we have the Merrills. These three couples, for example, they are totally committed to making sure that whenever we incorporate and acquire a new company and we put them under our Garden City family of companies, we are now walking alongside these management teams. So our first value of Garden City is Christ-centered. Our second one is others-focused, right? So what we really try to do, Mark Whitaker was just telling me about T-Factor, that their first value is we honor God by serving people, right? So that's all we try to do. Very simply put, we have very simple things that we do to serve people, to honor people, to focus on the actual human, right? To actually focus on the human. So every Monday morning, this morning, our holding company, we get together and we just pray over all of our leaders, right? That's what we do every single Monday morning. We have a monthly call with all of our leaders and we ask them, how can we pray for you and your teams? We're talking about with your wife, Robin, and some of our investors. Lee Davis's wife told us at our investor summit, how can I get involved? These are my companies that I'm involved with. Can we do a monthly prayer call that we host for all of our companies and their employees, right? Other things we do is we bring our CEOs to events like this. We write something I did for a pool company that we owned is they did a Chinese buffet every year, and everyone used to bring a bunch of liquor. And they used to do, I forgot what it's called, the Black Panther, something Santa. And everyone used to buy each other tequila, rum. It was a disaster. And so I said, we're going to throw that out. Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to write 80 letters, custom letters to every single person, to them and their spouses. The other thing we're going to do is we are going to make sure that every manager, because we did a Christmas bonus, every manager hands out a bonus to their employee, to their team member, and they write them a handwritten thank you letter. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to exclude alcohol. The other thing that we're going to do is we're going to honor people one by one and affirm them. I mean, there was tears everywhere, right? It's because we're focusing on the human being, right? We're focusing on the human aspect. So the way that we live out Jesus is trying to be the hands and feet of Jesus, is seeing people as they are. This weekend, I was talking to one of our CEOs, and him and his wife are in marital counseling, and I said, it sounds like you guys need to get away. Can we bless you guys by sending you to one of our investors' houses? And he said, you have no clue what that would mean for us, right? So these are just the things. We try to celebrate life. We try to work hard. We try to focus on others. But we really try to lean on our collective of 50, knowing that we're stronger together, and say, hey, investors, hey, shareholders, how can you help our family of companies with what they're going through, with cultural, marital, spiritually, et cetera? So we try to do it together.
Yeah, so likewise, Wes, similar to what we were saying before, how do you foster that? I mean, how do you foster the human flourishing? I mean, you've got a defined city redemptive fund, and you've got a defined freedom fund that's around flourishing. You also likewise have investors also. So how do you all, manage that tension of the returns, and what do you do to proactively try to, foster the values that you all hold so clear?
First and foremost, we're servants to the entrepreneurs. So we have Eagle University, where we're trying to just pour out the experience of across the 4 general partners. We've started 67 companies and been through a lot and made a ton of mistakes. So Eagle University is just getting on there and saying, "Here's a mistake I made. Here's a template for how to not make that mistake." Whether it's everything from how to build a sales pipeline to how to run a board of advisors, board of directors. So many things about entrepreneurs have to be so many things to so many people. We just try to pour out to them through Eagle University. We have Eagle Leadership Development, where we're just pouring. We have an amazing man pouring into their formation, both spiritually and just being a place that's not a capital provider to help them figure out their spiritual formation practices. Have they learned to listen to the Holy Spirit? Have they learned to take days away and just be silent and get connected to the Lord? Have they taken time with their family? And then at the Eagle Foundation, we're pouring a lot of resources into building the ecosystems around the problems we're trying to solve. So in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex, we're just finishing up a 100-something interview process of on the foundation side of leaders all over the city trying to figure out what are the biggest needs in the city, what are the biggest opportunities in the city, and what's kind of the low-hanging fruit. And then we're going to handpicking leaders to get around the table together on the top 10 issues that they've told us they want to take action on and script them through, trying to kick off a bunch of working groups to see things move in a city, because we know we're one of many capital providers on these big issues. And so if we can help connect the dots in the ecosystem where we're part of it, then everybody's going to win, and there will be some amazing companies that are part of that. But also just trying to give back to the communities and see the ecosystem built, because you can't change cities, you can't end modern day slavery, you can't do massive things like that without really participating as a team player in something much bigger than yourself.
Great. So Mike, you were telling us a little bit about how you try to infuse values in companies. So you are an investment firm, so you attract investors, and for the last couple of thousand years, the primary language of investors has been return on investment. That's really the only benchmark that we really had nomenclature to talk about. So how do you blend those two? What's your theory about infusing Christian values into a company, fostering those within a company, how that relates to returns?
Yeah. I think if you're an atheist, the smartest business decision you can make is run your business like a Christ-led business. It's just good business. It is, right? You look at all these business models that are actually not even Christian businesses, right? Like Trader Joe's or Publix or Costco or Patagonia, and over and over and over again. And what they do is they honor their people. And something I say a lot is happy employees equal happy customers, which equals a thriving business. It's just fact, right? It's just fact. And so that's not why we do it, but it definitely helps that the way that we want to run our business in a redemptive way also results in a more profitable business. To answer your question, I think that for us, it's really about two things. It is profit, because without profit, no one has a job, and we don't have the opportunities we can have, and we are called to be stewards of our dollars, but it also is definitely purpose. On profit, our business model is super simple. For us, if we buy a business for 4 times of their cash flow, so if a business makes, I'll keep it easy, $1 million a year of earnings, and we pay that owner $4 million, that means if that business does not grow at all, and you put 0 debt on it, you're getting a 25% cash on cash yield. First year, you make $1 million of your investment. Second year, you make 2, 3, 4. So in 4 years, you recouped your investment. That's a 25% cash on cash return. If you buy a business for 5 times of that cash flow, now it's a 20% cash on cash return, right? So for us, we're very disciplined going into actually paying the business owner a fair value of what that business is worth, right? And the value that we could add for it, and making sure that we know that we're probably going to have to add a lot of investments. A lot of these small, mid-sized, founder-led, family-owned, lower middle market businesses are undercapitalized. For the most part, they are. So we know that we have to reinvest a lot to actually keep it sustainable and profitable over the decade to come. On the flip side, we're also looking out of the gates in diligence to say, what are the areas that we could actually dignify people, give them respect, purpose, opportunity, put them on an upward mobility track, give them leadership development, as you said, Wes, that we know that if we do this, it's because they will be blessed, they will experience the Lord in this, they will actually realize that they'll go back home as a better wife or better husband, right? And in return, they'll also make our business better and more profitable. Maybe the first year, net income decreases because you have a business that's making $5 million a year and you're going, well, we want to do leadership development and we want to hire a chaplain and we want to increase everyone's wages because they haven't been paying them well. Also, the workplace is not fun to work when. This place looks horrible, right? It looks like it's the 1980s in here. Let's modernize that. All of that takes investment for the people. So that year, maybe we don't make 5, maybe we make 3.5 million. But I guarantee you, if you give me 4, 5, 6, 7 years, we'll make that without a doubt and even more in the future. So everything we do is kind of blended, Chad. It's purpose, profit, purpose, profit. It's all blended in. I think it's hand in hand. You can't have one without the other.
Great. So Wes, I'm going to take it a little bit differently. So some folks in here have been venture investors, but many probably have not, and many listening. And also we had 3 entrepreneurs on here, lots more listening, and faith-driven entrepreneurs all over the world. How do you evaluate where you invest? You know, we're starting a company. We're trying to figure out what to do. All 3 of these guys that were up here earlier went through a fundraise process. I've seen you at a lot of pitch competitions. You know, take us inside Eagle a little bit, and how do you think about where you invest money and what are criteria and things of that nature?
Yeah, for us, while we're hyper-focused on faith-aligned founders with a huge impact, we're very narrow on the business models that we're looking at, where it's almost always a business-to-business company. So a company that's coming and helping a business do something better, faster, or cheaper, and it's usually tech-enabled in some way. So a software-as-a-service company, a tech-enabled service, or a fintech. And so while we're getting hundreds of deals coming across the transom every month, very quickly you get down to, hey, do they have an incredible impact? Are they a B2B tech-enabled service company? And then you take the couple of those and take them through deep diligence and find out, do they have the team to go the distance and do their cash cycles work and things like that? So we have a rigorous process where we're taking them through and just figuring out, you have some front-end questions about, hey, if this works brilliantly, how is the world different? And just trying to open-endedly let entrepreneurs kind of tell you what their dream for success looks like, because you're hearing their values right off the bat. So if you're talking to somebody that you're thinking about partnering with them in some way, asking them questions like, how is the world different if you're successful, or what does success look like to you, is really powerful to figure. Or just asking them straight up, what are the values of your company? Mm-hmm. That's one of the easiest ways when we're getting, oh, that looks like a B2B company that looks like it might fit some of our business models. Just asking them their values, and you pretty quickly, or how they see the world differently, you pretty quickly are finding out, is this a values-driven founder? That's some of the tricks of how we partner. But we're also, because we're working with companies, in some cases up to 2 years before we put capital to work. So we've got 2 business labs where we just pour out effort, and in many cases we're just giving time to founders and and that's basically our ministry. We're bringing capital and consulting to companies, and many of those we're going to pour tons and tons of hours into helping them figure out, and then we're not going to end up being the right capital partner for them, or they'll discover this wasn't actually the right call for their life or something. So it takes a lot of time of pouring in that effort, and then being able to put the capital to work once you've gone through all that process.
Yeah. So Mike, just a little bit on a macro. We turn on the news. We heard Dr. Carson the last couple of days. Inflation is the topic we're hearing a lot about. Interest rates are rising. You know, the economy's tenuous. We've got a war in Ukraine. Energy crisis is going on. How does that inform kind of the landscape? Where do you see opportunities? Why do you all like what you like? And, you know, just as investors and folks that are thinking about, you know, growing and preserving wealth, how do you process what's going on in the world and think about where Garden City makes investments?
Yeah, something I say a lot that some people give me slack for that they don't like when I say this, but boring is beautiful. So I love boring, unsexy, non-cyclical businesses, right? Love them, love them, love them. It doesn't matter if interest rates are at 19%. It doesn't matter if unemployment is at 10%. You and Robin, if your AC is not working in the heat of the summer, you are going to call someone to come over quickly and replace your furnace or your AC, correct? It's just fact, right? It does not matter how bad it is. If you're at a hospital, you need a janitorial service, or if you're at a manufacturing plant. You just need it no matter what, right? So we look for businesses that no matter what the headwinds are going to be, we look for non-cyclical businesses that will weather the storms like they did in '08, right? So we look for critical services that are not nice to have, but must-haves. So that's what we look for. There's three things we look for when we buy a business. One is profitability, two is people, and three is projections. So profitability, do these companies make at least double-digit net margins? Now, I don't want to hear about EBITDA margins, right? EBITDA before interest, taxes, depreciation. Last time I checked, all those things actually cost money. Like you have to pay taxes, right? So it's how much money is a business actually profiting every year? I asked the owner, okay, you made $3 million EBITDA, but how much did you actually take home if you wanted to take home everything? Are you talking about cash flow? Yeah, cash flow, $2 million. Okay, so your business makes $2 million a year. So we look for businesses that are highly profitable, that have a history of profitability, double-digit net margins. The second thing we look for is people. We've looked at over probably 1,500 companies now in the last 2.5 years. We've made an investment in 5 out of 1,500. And the reason is, this is probably the biggest reason, almost every small to mid-sized business that we acquire or make a minority investment is an owner hustle. If the owner gets hit by a bus tomorrow, the business, you will see the financials immediately dip, crash almost, right? So they are all held on by the owner. You ask the owner a couple diligence questions in terms of, tell me about your biggest customer. Oh, that's Billy. Billy's my best friend. I go golfing with him every Tuesday, blah, blah, blah. Tell me about the headquarters you guys are building. Oh, I found that because my next door neighbor told me about it. I designed the whole plans. That's an owner hustle. If we come in as a new owners, we're buying that entire hustle of that person, and if they're no longer there goes the special sauce of it. The other thing we look for in people is how strong is a non-owner management team, right? Because these are the people that are incorporating the business. So does this company have a non-owner management team that is super strong and solid and passionate about people the way we are? And the last is projections. Do we actually foresee that this is an industry that that's actually needed in the years to come, right? So there's a lot of industries that we see that we're just saying, we're not interested in that industry. Like one industry that you and I talked about last week is the man security industry. Is man security here to stay? Is it not? Is everything becoming technology, right? Do you need security guards? That's a pretty good conversation. However, if I see a deal that's an electric vehicle installation company that has 1,000 workers that's installing electric vehicles in the Southeast, I want that company. I see where those macro trends are going, right? I want to buy into that. So does that answer your question?
Yeah. So let's take the last 10 or 12 minutes here. Someone that all of us know and has been a great friend of FCCI, Henry Kasner, I think may have coined, and he says, every investment has an impact. What's your impact going to be? And let's try to kind of unpack a little bit, maybe away from Garden City and Eagle and just into the macro faith-driven investing environment. Why is it important for us to think about where we invest our money? Does God care about where we invest our money? What are your thoughts about that and how that kind of informs where you all head?
It's really a personal conviction journey. For me, I got into the industry as a financial advisor, and at first I checked out what was then the biblically responsible investing movement, and I was just kind of not impressed by the negative vetting of like, hey, we're going to cut out some tobacco and things like that. I was already passionate about combating slavery and their way of, the particular fund group that I looked at, their way of dealing with modern day slavery was to divest of Southeast Asia, and I was like, that's not very nuanced way to deal with it. But then I started, the Lord, as we got a chance to invest in amazing entrepreneurs, I got really excited that I was seeing seeing companies like Liveful, who you know, who's bringing health access to the poor and oppressed, and seeing entrepreneurs that were making a really great profit and transforming whatever their passionate area was at the time, and started seeing companies in public markets like Eventide who were really performing well because they were really looking at the 360 of how a company is touching everybody that they interact with, and got really excited that, wow, everybody needs to know about this, and have helped a lot of advisors trying to figure out, okay, how do I integrate this into my practice, and talking with Kingdom advisors. So for many people, I'm convinced as you look industry-wide, it's finding an advisor who actually can help you figure out, okay, most people aren't going to do a real estate investment or a venture capital investment like the things that we do at our firm. But most people need to go to their advisor or go through, like Vipperman has helped a lot of people with his courses where he'll take people through 2 days of what's your passion and what first step can you take of getting involved in some way. For many people, it's finding an advisor who understands the landscape and can help them get down to, okay, your passion is Africa, let's go talk to Talenton, or your passion is legal defense, let's go talk to folks who are in defending freedom and things like that. So it's a discovery process, and for most people, it's finding advisors that can really help them walk the journey.
Yeah. So similar, I happen to know you've got two advisors that have been really great friends of FCCI and Faith along. Horst Schulze, who's spoken here many times and founded the Ritz-Carlton where we are here, and the Kathy. Dan was an original member of the Young Leadership Group of FCCI. And so as you think about it and as you learn from them, what's the impact that you hope to have through Garden City? When you look back in 20, 30, 40, 50 years, what's the impact and what you learn from guys like that?
It's funny you bring both of those names up. When I pulled in here this morning, I was struck by being at the Ritz-Carlton on Amelia Island because Horst Schulze, one of our board members and investors, he and his wife have a unit right here. And so I called Horst when I got here in the lobby a couple hours ago. I said, Horst, you won't believe where I'm at right now. I'm at the Ritz-Carlton Amelia Island. And I will not repeat you what Horst said because it's not proper for stage. But he's very, said, that place, if I was running it, it would be so different. It's still a good place, but it was better when I ran it. And he goes, I have to go. You won't believe where I'm at. I go, well, where are you at? He goes, I'm with Dan Cathy right now. And Dan just surprised me at Chick-fil-A this morning. He just made a $10 million donation to Auburn Hospitality, and it's named the Horst Schulze Center of Hospitality at Auburn University.
Wow.
And they just surprised him with that this morning. So funny you say that. It's incredible the impact that Horst has had on hospitality, as well as Dan Cathy. The people like Dan Cathy and Horst Schulze and you and Robin and so many others have had on me is, I think it ties really closely into the question you asked Wes about. So God obviously cares about money, right? It's mentioned, it's the number one topic most mentioned in the Word of God is money. But what God really cares about is people, right? That's really what God cares about is people. He's out to pursue all of our hearts and to give us all shalom and to give us all a life of enrichment and a life of adventure, right? And a life that we could thrive. So that's the reason why we are about people, right? That's the reason why Luke's janitorial business fires me up. It's not just a janitorial business. It's a business comprised of 300 to 400 people that are God's sons and daughters, right? And the world sometimes sees them as a cog in the wheel, right? Just a serial number. And I say, no. Just as much as that person there is God's beloved, as am I, right? So that's why our name is Garden City. In the beginning, when God created the whole world, he created the garden, and he put us in it to thrive, prosper, flourish, co-labor alongside him, work alongside him. He also called us to rest. Obviously, we messed it up along the way. But now, as believers, we actually have a stinking opportunity here on this world, this short little life we have left. We have an opportunity to co-partner with God, grab the kingdom of God in the garden and bring it into our cities. hence Garden City, right? We could bring what he started in the garden and bring it into our cities. And the fact that we get to do that in the marketplace, I think is the greatest opportunity we have as investors, as business owners, as whatever we are, is whatever in our marketplace. One common denominator is we all work, right? So regardless if we're investing, buying, operating, working within, we all have an opportunity to bring the garden into our cities. So by Hort Schultze and Dan Cathy, they're mentors of mine. They're like godfathers of mine, right? Just showing me how they've done it before on focusing on people, and their profit always follows.
Great, great. So in 60 or 90 seconds as we start to wrap up here, what's kind of a parting thought that you would like to give folks about? It could be about Eagle, it could be about investing, it could be about the impact that they can have, where they use their influence. What would you like to share, Wes?
I think it's an incredibly exciting time. Just to chime in right on top of what you're dead on, Mike, of where this is going. I think we have such opportunities with a whole generation of entrepreneurs that are making transformative impact on the things that for generations we've been giving into things like combating modern day slavery or seeing our cities change. And we have opportunities now to actually get the investment bucket of our financial life going towards the same goals that we've been giving to for so long. And I think there's going to be a blurring of lines over the next generation between what we're investing in alongside what we're giving to, and seeing them go towards the same ends. Because at its core, we're going to stand in a very short time before our dear Lord and Savior Jesus, and we want to hear, "Well done, good and faithful servant." Not, "Oh, good job giving," but wow, kind of missed it. Like there was some great opportunity on the investment side. So I think there's a lot of really exciting opportunities for more and more of both buckets of capital to really go after the things that make your heart beat and make Jesus' hearts beat.
Great, thank you. Last thoughts?
If you are a business leader here, I would highly encourage you, what is one way before the end of this year that you could allow your people to be seen, recognized, and heard? I know that the former CEO Synovus, one of the things that he did was he would always do an internal net promoter score of their employees. And he said, "We never be excellent. However, I want you to reach out to me to let me know how I could do better, how we could do better. And if I don't, that's on me." Right? So what's one thing that y'all could do? Is it write a card to people? Is it host a bi-weekly lunch with just 5 to 6 people, right? Is it pray for others? Is it having a celebration day? Is your company too serious and not realizing that we're called to actually live a life of celebration? Go do something fun, right? So whatever it is, what is one thing that you could do to allow your people to feel seen, heard, recognized? One of the biggest things people want, one of the biggest things they want is, and Hort Schultze taught me this, the first thing J.D. Power figured out after interviewing the people is I just want to feel as though I'm part of something. I just want to feel as though I'm part of something. They're working for something, but they don't feel as they're a part of something. Number 2, I don't feel like I actually have a voice, right? Number 3 is I don't see where my future lies here. So what about a monthly town hall that you show how the company's doing, that you show them how they're involved, that you show them what's coming up next, right? What about that transparency? So I just encourage you, what is one thing you could do to allow your people to be more seen, more recognized, and more heard before the end of the year?
So as we wrap up, I'd just like to say, Eagle Venture and Garden City, they're doing great things. They're impacting. I hope we've shared a little bit of how you can do with your investments. You're going to hear more this week. There's other great friends in the room. Sovereign's Capital, John Coleman's going to be speaking with us in a couple of days. There's a few folks that are here. Ron Blue Trust is full of advisors who try to help us understand how do we make investments, how do we have redemption in what we do. And I guess I would leave it with saying that on any Sunday in America or around the world, you can walk into a church and you'll probably hear a sermon, or you can potentially hear a sermon about what God thinks about the 10%, what we should give, what our philanthropy could look about. I don't know that I've ever heard a sermon that speaks about the 90%. And that's really why FCCI exists, and Faith Driven and other organizations around. And the fact of the matter is, around the world, that capital is influence. And where we invest our money, where we invest our time, really impacts the world. We had 3 guys up here that both influence and capital kind of inform where they're going. And I just really encourage you to talk to these guys, talk to folks from Ron Blue and Sovereignton, National Christian Fund, and Helping Hands, Brian's in the room, that help enable people to understand and reconcile how you use the resources, how you steward what you have. And the question that I asked them that I would just leave with you, there's a statement that every investment has an impact. You know, what do you want your impact to be? So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Mike. Thank you, Wes.
Thank you.
And look forward to talking more about this topic.
Thanks for being a part of these live stream leader talks from the FCCI International Conference. It is our prayer that you've received insights that will increase your potential to be empowered to serve, and that as our conference verse states in 1 Peter 4:11, you'll leverage the gift of serving others through all the strength and energy that God will supply through Christ, knowing that it will bring glory to God. Before you go, please take a few minutes to join the free FCCI Connect app. You'll step into a fellowship of several hundred other Christian business owners and leaders who are committed to fulfilling the call that God has placed on their life to pursue business as a platform for ministry. If we can serve you through FCCI, please don't hesitate to contact us through our website at fcci.org. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Well, and thank you everybody for joining us for our live stream leader talks. Those of you in the room, we are now breaking for lunch. We have a couple of great sit-down options here at the Ritz-Carlton. It's Coquina or Coast. If you want to go connect and sit down and have a meal, or if you prefer grab and go, head over to First Drop. You can get something there, take it out, and enjoy the resort. We ask that you come back here by 2 o'clock to hear from Richard Blackaby. Thanks, everybody.